everybody, Roll for Crit here with a review of an indie game called Trains and Cargo. You know Trains, they're in many board games, and this is no exception. So you can see it laid out in front of us. It goes from 2 to 6 players, but if you have more than 3, they recommend 4 and 6 to be teams. And essentially your goal is to get the most cargo, load it on your trains, and make the most money by selling it off for points. And you have this market board which tells you how much the cargo of different types is currently worth. As you can see, there are quite a few different varieties.
Indeed.
And on your turn, you're going to have cards that you can play that will help you get that cargo.
Yes, there are 3 kinds of cards. They are simply get cargo cards. There are marketplace cards, which will either raise or decrease the marketplace value of resources. And then there are effect cards. The effect cards have a wide variety of effects, such as either doubling your market card, hurting your opponent somehow, or maybe giving you an extra advantage.
Yes, like for instance, there's a one that gives you a bonus for each carriage in your train car, so you're rewarded even more for having a long train that you have to build up over time. Now, you see these 3 route boards in front of us as well, which are technically an advanced variant that you can choose to play with later on. We jumped in with them right away. If you're familiar with games, you know, you'll probably be okay trying that out first. And the way that works is normally you load your train, you can load 2 pieces of cargo per turn as an option. And
each carriage is considered 2 pieces.
Each carriage holds 2 pieces. And then when you're ready, you send it off and you score for each thing depending on where they are on the market board. With the routes, when you're loading your train, you actually can choose to take one of these, and it'll actually have detailed spots for your cargo to go in. And each board has different special perks that come along with it.
For example, the countryside route is better you get more points for loading grain and livestock on there, while the city route gets a big bonus for people and for food and cars. So partly looking at what you have, you may want a specific board compared to others. In addition, some of the boards have, if you reach that point, they'll give you some free resources as well, which is even better.
Yeah, so a lot of that is something to take into account. You may even want to potentially take a board that you think your opponent wants if you don't want them to have it or something like that. And of course, it's all based on the values of these at the time.
However, once you send your train off and to score points, you do give the board back. So there isn't a permanent thing. So 1 point, I started off first with the industrial mountain route, and later we went to the city route, and then back to the mountain one. So there'll be a back and forth claiming these different routes.
Right. You also notice this orange train here. The orange train is required for longer carriages on your train cars, more carriages. So past a certain point, you need the orange one, and that's an action you can choose to do on your turn, is swap out for that guy.
However, there's a limited number, and such as, for example, have we set up in a 2-player game, there's only 1 available.
Right, so unless there is actually a card that will force your opponent to downgrade their train, you're going to have to wait for them to use it before you get a chance to have this if you want to sell off a bigger train load.
But once again, looking at the boards, if you're advantageous enough, you may go for the countryside route then, which does not actually need the orange card to get to the full 15 cards.
So that's essentially how the game works. Once this entire deck runs out, that's it. You get an extra turn each player, and whoever has the most points wins. You're just kind of keeping track of your score round by round with a piece of paper or something like that, which it almost has the feel of like a trick-taking game where you're counting up your scores from each round, which can go pretty high.
Yes, I believe I ended a score in the 800s.
Yeah, so depending on your combos and things that you manage to pull off, can be pretty high scores. I wouldn't even begin to guess what the average is meant to be.
Odds are, judging by whenever we look at averages after our games, we're usually below.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's about 2,000.
Yeah, that probably sounds about right. 3,000-4,000, somewhere in that range. I would say this is certainly tactical versus strategic, or short term versus long term, in that you can't really say, oh, I'm gonna try to go all in on the wood and steel type of, not Pokemon, but cargos, because There's no wood type of Pokemon, right?
Oh, grass.
Okay, yeah, grass is what. Sorry, this is a tangent. Because your opponent might have a bunch of cards that lower their value, and when that happens, you might not have cards to raise them back up. In which case, you're just stuck. So you're going to have to make the best of what you can during that situation. Because of that, there is a lot of randomness in this deck of what you are dealt. There are some cards that can help you with that will help you discard cards and redraw. Depending on which mode you're playing, there's also an option to get rid of a card per turn and redraw it if you don't want it anymore.
You will always have 5 cards available each round.
Right.
But the challenging thing is sometimes you can have maybe all market cards, and you can only play one of each type, unless something weird states otherwise. So that's the challenge, is also managing your cards that way. In addition, you can either send out your card to get so you can either get points, play cards, or what was the other thing? Or upgrade your train. So it becomes a challenge of what's the best thing for me to do right now, because maybe you have like, oh, I want to really get that wood up, but I really need that orange train because I'm going to pass over the limit on the Industrial Mountain route.
The game this kind of reminded me of, in a sense, was Harbor, which is a little game, which is also sort of like Le Havre. Similar kind of games where you're selling off goods of some value.
Well, really, I think that's definitely the biggest thing to the game that I like that's interesting, and I think it's probably people would argue the same with Le Havre and Harbor, is the market manipulation in order to try to plan out your move to be like, wait for it. Meat's gone up, I'm selling now.
Right, yeah, exactly. I like that aspect as well. The root boards definitely added a more interesting kind of flavor to the game also, though you might want to try both ways if you just want.
No, I mean, they definitely, because there became a point where it's like, technically, cars are more worthwhile on the market board, but because I'm on the Industrial Mountain board, the +4 to the wood and the coal actually brings maybe close, if not more so.
Yeah, for sure. For me, at times that randomness of not having the right cards to play and not being able to maybe get yourself out of a bad situation could be pretty frustrating. If you're someone who really wants their, strategic all-in games where you're always going to have a backup plan kind of a thing, you will probably also be frustrated playing this.
You didn't like it when you had only market cards that raised grain when I was the only one with grain?
Right, stuff like that can happen. Or there were times where I had a ton of cargo because I just kept getting cargo cards.
And I didn't, so...
Yeah, and you had nothing. But like a little bit of an O. Henry situation where we could have switched places. I do think it's also interesting that they have the team play, because you're not supposed to really communicate that much with your partner, but kind of hint towards what you're doing. So that if you're someone who wants a pretty light, casual kind of game, this is something you might want to take a look at. If you like trains, if you like cargo, they're both there.
As you like marketplaces?
We will have a link in our description as to where you can get your hands on it at some point if you want to. And otherwise, that's going to do it for this little Roll for Crit review.
I'm Will Keeler.
And I'm Jonathan Estes. Thanks for watching.